Every expedition in search of Sasquatch has the potential to make history, but only if we document our explorations like scientists. In wildlife biology and ecology, scientists have spent decades learning how to study rare and elusive animals. Animals like wolves, orangutans, snow leopards, mountain gorillas are all species that are extremely difficult to track and therefore study. So, to handle this, scientists developed methods to turn these fleeting moments and even silences into data that can be compared, tested, and trusted. We're going to learn how to borrow these scientific methods for our own Sasquatch research so our fieldwork isn't just guesswork. It can become part of a structured body of knowledge that is going to propel Sasquatch research forward while also being grounded in proven scientific principles and methods. And that, my friends, is exciting. So, buckle in. Let's get to it. But before we totally dive in, if you're new to the channel, hi, my name's Terrestrial. I'm a naturalist, ex-NASA researcher, and also the creator of the Sasquatch Data Project. I love science, math, statistics, AI, and Bigfoot, so if those things are your jam too, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. To kick things off, why does structure even matter? When primatologists like Diane Fossey or Jane Goodall were out in the field studying chimpanzees and mountain gorillas, and they actually saw one, they didn't just write down in their notebook, I saw one. They took extremely detailed notes, logging when, where, how, and what happened throughout the entire day. That attention to detail is exactly what's made their research so credible and valuable even decades later. And right now in Sasquatch research, there's honestly very little structure. And that means even really great research runs the risk of being lost as just another story. But if we adopt standardized methods, our fieldwork becomes part of something much larger. They become usable data that can then be compared across years, geographic regions, or even researchers. And that is so important because at the end of the day, we're all citizen scientists. We're not just out there to explore, we're out there to contribute to a body of knowledge. And if we want our data and our research to be taken seriously, we have to follow the same methods as scientists. That's how our work stays credible, and that's how our work has lasting value. So let's start out with the essential things to record. These are the foundation of every solid field observation. Combined together, they transform casual notes into scientific data. The first thing is the biggest thing, which is to record the date and the time down to the minute. Animals typically follow temporal patterns, so if we have enough of this data, we can start to look for correlations. Maybe vocalizations peak right around dawn and during certain moon phases. We don't know until we have the data to go look for these things. Up next is coordinates. Oh my gosh, if we have coordinates, we have so many possibilities for all kinds of different models and testing and figuring out the when and the where of Sasquatch encounters. So when it's possible, write down those coordinates. Other things to make note of are the weather. We can go and get comprehensive weather data if we have an exact date, but typically how these APIs work is they will give you a general overview for the whole day. So let's say it rains for an hour, it might mark the entire day as a rain day, when in reality it only rained for an hour. So definitely be making note of visibility and weather patterns. Habitat descriptions are also really important. What vegetation is in bloom? Do you see any edible vegetation? What's the slope like? Where's the nearest water source? Etc. Ecologists rely so heavily on habitat descriptions to figure out why an animal might be in that particular location. So the more complete your description is, the easier it becomes to connect patterns to other sites. If you get lucky enough to actually visually observe a Sasquatch, have extremely objective descriptions of behaviors, with the keyword being objective. Instead of just writing down, it looked aggressive or whatever, write down the physical things that made you perceive it that way. Was it standing extremely upright? Did it vocalize? Did it move towards you? Try to be as objective as possible so that we can examine these points later. Also make note of any ambient sounds or odors that you might notice in the environment. Did you notice that there was a lack of bird sounds, or maybe the birds were particularly chatty? Did you notice a foul smell? If so, try to describe it to the best of your ability. Maybe you smelled a particular flower in bloom. All of that stuff makes a difference. Also, make note of other wildlife that you see. Did you see any deer? An owl? What kinds of birds? Did you see any frogs? Insects? Those things are important too. Other animal presences can indicate how the ecosystem's doing just in general. And sometimes they can act as indicators of disturbances. From a more humanistic standpoint, what were you doing during your research? Were you hiking? Were you staying still? Were you cooking? Were you camping? Your own movement and noises affect what animals perceive. Knowing your actions helps us understand if the observations that you made might have been influenced by you. And finally, make note of your emotions and the emotions of others on your team. If you experienced something, were you nervous, were you excited, or were you more curious and calm, cool, and collected? In anthropology and psychology, these patterns really matter. They help us understand perception and recall towards these animal encounters. These core notes are your foundation. When you collect them consistently, you're creating a really strong basis for evaluation later, and you're already doing what most field biologists implement. If you want your field notes, though, to hold elevated scientific value, let's go beyond the basics. These are the type of details that professional biologists include because it allows future researchers to interpret, analyze, and replicate the data accurately. First and foremost, document the total field effort. How long you were at the site, how many observers were present, and the distance you covered. This tells us how much of an opportunity there was to detect an animal. Also recording things like visibility into the forest, foliage cover, all things that can either hinder or increase your chances of actually detecting something. Without this context, we can't tell if no observation means true absence or just very poor detectability. Up next, noticing the direction, distance, or angle of any sighting, sound, or scent helps us determine the geometry of detection. This data lets us correct for bias later. Was it really far away, up close, uphill, obscured by some vegetation? All of that matters. This is the kind of detail that separates a vague anecdote from a usable observation. Let's say you observe some kind of behavior. When you record behavior systematically using focal or scan sampling, you create time-structured data. That's how ethologists measure patterns. How long the behavior lasted, at what frequency, and under what conditions. It prevents cherry-picking memorable moments and creates a balanced record of activity. Up next, let's talk about media metadata. Logging camera and recording settings like GPS location, timestamps, etc. links these digital recordings back to real-world conditions. Without metadata, photos and video lose their reliability. For things like camera traps, height, direction, sensitivity are all things that help determine how interpretable that footage will be months and years later. So it's very important that you record these things. And if you hit the jackpot and you get lucky enough to find some physical evidence and you gather it, every step of that process needs to be logged and documented. Each sample should have its own ID, coordinates, and chain of custody notes. This maintains traceability and credibility if that sample is ever tested. In wildlife biology, untracked samples are never used because provenance is everything. And last, but definitely not least, label every single page with your name, the date, and the site that you're at. Start every single entry with weather data and the basic information that we covered before. Also, making quick sketches or site maps of the location can help give future readers context as to where you were and what was going on, even if the digital data is lost. In any kind of research, clean, consistent notes are gold. So we've very thoroughly gone over every single thing that you should be taking note of. But we haven't mentioned the one thing that gets overlooked time and time again, but is critical to this type of research. And that is logging when nothing happens. You sat in the woods for 12 hours. You didn't hear a thing, you didn't see a thing. Literally nothing happens. That is super important. Make note of it. It is absolutely not wasted time. It is usable data. Ecologists call this absence data, and this is the data that helps us determine if the species is truly absent or it's just a coincidence that you didn't experience anything at that particular time. When you log absences, log them just as carefully. We need exact coordinates, times, conditions, etc. And if you want to learn more about absence data and why it is critical to this topic and this research, go watch my video. The whole goal of having such meticulous field notes is to make sure that we're capitalizing on our time in the field. We need to know that we're collecting data that's going to create lasting knowledge in the Sasquatch field. Every note, whether it catalogs an observation or not, becomes a piece of the puzzle. And that's how field biology works and how elusive animals are studied. And it's how we citizen scientists are going to turn Sasquatch research into something that's structured, credible, and enduring. If you found this video useful and are interested in a free resource I do have a field guide on my website. It goes over basically everything in this video and more of all the things that you should be writing down while you're in the field. So feel free to head on over to sasquatchdataproject.com and download your copy. Also, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you found this video useful and you want to learn more about the scientific side of the Sasquatch topic. And if you want to keep up with the Sasquatch Data Project and keep up with all the latest happenings in Sasquatch statistics, make sure you follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all that stuff. I post weekly. Thank you so much again for watching. Keep it nerdy and stay rad.